Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, I have Layla behind me. She probably hasn't been on the channel in a while, and more importantly, she's all packed and ready to go to an event. But with my luck, we are not going anywhere. So what had happened was I was going to go to that time trial event at ORP. It was a 2-day event. First day I was not able to get into. The second day I just couldn't make work. So then I was like, I really want to drive. What can I do? At Portland International Raceway, SCCA was going to host an autocross event there. But due to COVID-19, that event was canceled. In one of my previous videos, I'm pretty sure I mentioned the fact that I'm just using this car like as a weekend cruiser right now, and obviously I'll still take it to the autocross here and there. But to ensure reliability, I actually switched out the valve cover gasket because that was one of the oil leaks. As you can see, I even sort of cleaned the valve cover so the engine bay does look a lot nicer. In addition to that, I switched out the oil pump seal. That oil pump seal is actually like not the hardest thing to do. It's just a little cumbersome because you have to take off the engine mount, take off the timing belt, and then you undo those bolts. Because the oil pump has 2 seals, there's obviously where it connects to the block, and then there's also a little, I think, driven gear. I don't know if that's the technical name, but that's a few bolts, and there's an O-ring on that one as well. I decided to go ahead and switch out those seals because it was getting really bad, mainly in terms of all the oil that was leaking out. It was starting to smoke whenever I would drive it. Obviously, that's a huge issue. The second thing is, considering the truck and trailer stuff that's happening and the fact that I want to do more work to turbo over there, I don't have money to do everything. So if I can limp this engine along as far as I possibly can and as cheap as I can, I'm going to do that. I will say though, the engine itself is actually in pretty good shape. I did make sure to compression test it, and I even tested out the oil pressure. All the numbers look nice and healthy. I mean, I do think I probably made some or did some irreparable damage because I ran the engine with the oil pump leaking. So did I shorten the life? Probably. I still think the engine has a lot of life in it though. Now the other thing I've done is I actually use Turbo's old rims, and they actually bolt right up without any spacer or anything like that. The only thing I had to do was take off the little center cap there because it wouldn't fit due to the axles. The back doesn't look too bad. It does have slight odd fitment, but the front, man, it looks like a monster truck. Look at all that. So the reason that I have decided to run the older rims from Turbo is because my horrible luck just happens to continue. The other day I was driving my car and I got a flat, and it's actually really random. I was driving and I hit something, don't know what, and a nice clean slice through the tire. That goes all the way down to the cords. I actually went back to try to figure out what the heck I ran over, and I couldn't find anything, but I did hear a metallic clinging, so whatever it wasn't good. Now to show Turbo some love, we're gonna go ahead and install some crash bolts. All these are gonna allow us to do is have more adjustability in the camber. I'm throwing the camber bolts on to help with the rubbing. So it's kind of like a multifactorial issue, but these rims rub in the fender, but more importantly, they also rub the wheel liner, because if it was just the fender, all I'd have to do is roll it, but it's actually eating away at the wheel liner on both sides. Tucking the tire with the camber is gonna help out. I'm also gonna stiffen up the front sway bar. Is this ideal? Absolutely not, but it's kind of like the quick easy fix. If I had some adjustability in the suspension, that would be really nice, but I don't, because it just has lowering springs. But the big thing is these springs, even though they're stiffer than stock, because it's lowered and the suspension is out of whack in terms of the geometry, it essentially softens the spring. So this is hitting quite a bit. Let's just get one final look at the camber before we switch out those bolts right now. Now that I have the rim off, I can show you what I'm doing. There's these 2 bolts right here. The bottom one you loosen up. The top one you completely take out, replace it with the other one, and then you're able to adjust the camber or have more adjustability. All right. Now that we got both of them out, you can clearly see the difference. This is the one that was in there. As you can see, it's pretty thick. This one is smaller, which allows for more adjustability. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the top hole. I've heard people say that if depending on which hole you put it in, you can get slightly more. To be honest with you, I'm not really too concerned about that at all. The big thing with using these camber or crash bolts is just the simple fact that you want to make sure you snug them down really good to help minimize the chance of them moving. One thing I do want to touch on though is that it's pretty important to consistently check any suspension parts, because after a hard weekend of driving, I would bet $1,000 that your alignment is going to be changed, and that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to motorsports. Just to show you guys, because it's smaller, there's more adjustability here. With the bigger crash bolt, you don't have as much to wiggle it and move it around. Anyways, I'm going to do the camber bolt on the passenger side, and then we'll catch back up. Well guys, I got the car put all back together and it doesn't look half bad. I'm typically not a big fan of like a lot of camber unless it's functional. As you guys can see here though, it's definitely tucked a little bit more. So the tire being tucked with the fact that I stiffen up the sway bar in the front, that should hopefully help minimize that rollover and reduce the rubbing. As I mentioned before, I will definitely need an alignment because I have a bunch more toe out than I did prior to putting these crash bolts on. Now, off the top of my head, I think I'm probably going to go with something like a 1/16 of an inch of toe out. That's total. And then in the back, I'll probably do like an 1/8 inch of toe in. I might be able to get away with less because I know some people run like 0 degrees or 0 inches of toe in the back. But because of how tail happy this car is, I think that's going to help stabilize it. On another note, something I do want to make clear is that this is a 93 plus, not the 91 to 92s. On the 91 to 92s, people recommend running more toe in on the back end to help counteract the fact that on, I believe it's suspension rebound, the car likes to toe out, which contributes to that tail happy behavior. Although I will say, when it comes to suspension tuning, it is a sort of like a black art, and there's so many factors that can really go into it. So kind of take what I'm doing with a grain of salt, just because what works for me may not necessarily work for you, and that's okay. It literally just comes down to the individual factors at play for your situation. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. Stick around. Next week I'm hopefully taking one of these two cars to an autocross event. I don't know which one yet, just because I don't know. I'm going to decide the day of, just because I love driving this car because of the emotional attachment. It's still well balanced. I love driving the other car because it's a complete animal. So we'll see. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.